Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, Alpha wins, you lose. Also, the V-Team takes a look at Ball's ethics reform. And Bentley won, but is he in charge?
Well, of course it won't be easy. But nothing worthwhile ever is. That is why I have always failed where others have succeeded. For me, the greater the odds, the greater the challenge. And as always, I accept this challenge.
That's the answer. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V.
The Voice of Alabama Politics, with your host, Bill Britt. Now, the #1 political show in Alabama, The V.
Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V-Team. Welcome all.
How's it going?
Good day.
Good, good. Crazy week. But before we get into that, I want to congratulate Alabama's own Katie Britt, who is now the Chief of Staff for our senior senator in Washington, Richard Shelby. Congratulations to you, Katie, and your husband, Wesley.
Great news
and
to
for
break the
the
glass ceiling for ladies.
Yes,
And for the
women.
record, they're not
Shattered
you and
that.
Susan.
They are not Kenda, me,
We
and
would love
Susan.
to have them in our family.
They're
good folks.
They are
We're
really
sorry
good.
to lose them in Montgomery and from our church and community, but
But
it's
she
a great
shattered that
opportunity.
glass ceiling, honey,
Yeah,
for
baby,
women
I'm
in
for that.
Alabama.
Very proud of her. It has been a trying week. I mean, it was sort of like watching a NASCAR crash in slow motion. Susan, we got a BP bill out of the House and Senate, and the governor signed it. What did we get?
Finally. I mean, it managed to come out of joint committee, be concurred with in the House and in the Senate, and signed by the governor on the same day. Never mind the fact that it took us forever to get here. However, what we ended up with was a repayment of $161 million to the rainy day account. They're not going to pay all of the Alabama Trust Fund. What they're going to do with that is pay $238 million against that and then restructure the loan. That $238 million will take care of the payments for 17, 18, and 19. And then the rest of it gets restructured for $13 million a year. It's extended out to 2033. But what this does is by paying down these debts and by Baldwin and Mobile County giving up some of the money that they have, we're able to get another $120 million to Medicaid. Now that's in addition to the initial 70. So that'll cover the $85,000 for this year, and it'll put $105,000 toward whatever the deficit is next year. And plus, Baldwin County and Mobile County get to split $120,000 to fix bloody 98 and some of the problems they've still got.
And if that confuses you, it means they're kicking the can down the road, right, Claire?
Yeah, but Mobile and Baldwin counties, they should have gotten what they got.
They
at
did.
least more.
They should. They
Yeah.
should. Now, and I have to.
But the bottom line from what Susan said is Medicaid's hole got filled for at least the next 2 years. How
Yeah.
about that?
And I have to hand it to Senators Pittman, Albritton, and Hightower. That $15 million that's in there came from the money they were asking for. They donated that back up so that we can get on the RCO program.
Well, Jack, when are we what's the next crisis that we're going to have? I mean, what do we pray for locusts or floods? I mean, this is how we pay our bills with crisis?
Claire's always talking about Band-Aids, and she's right. I mean, our state government has always been a Band-Aid approach to everything. You know, they didn't have the guts to pass a lottery or to allow the people to vote on the lottery. So, and I believe that the lion's share of that money should go to Baldwin and Mobile County. They were the most impacted by the oil spill, let's face it.
But politics always is the favorite fellow in Alabama.
Oh,
Absolutely.
no doubt.
Well, I'm sure they're over there at the Capitol praying for locusts or some kind of red tide or something. Oh, roll tide. Right?
Oh, yeah.
But so many of the members that I talked to throughout the week, last week, the week before, said, well, we had to do something, and there was just no appetite by any of the citizens out there to raise taxes. Well, yeah, we know that.
Yeah.
We don't want to raise taxes, but as we know, what happened to the lottery?
Well, then that's the thing. I mean, you had that thing just was total chaos. I mean, that the governor came forward with that weak bill and had McClendon carry that. They really should have come with that bill first and kill that, and then came with the second bill. That would have been the smartest way, in my mind, to do it. But, you know, and Craig Ford, he said it on Friday. He said, look, these legislators, they trust the people to vote, to elect them, but they don't trust them to vote on a gaming. Jack?
But, yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Clay.
Well,
No,
I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
you know, and you had all these powers that be out there trying to kill it, to preserve their own turf. You had the Indians totally against it because they don't want any competition. And you had Alpha. You know, they pushed their way in there somehow and flexed their muscle to kill it. So you had a lot of people working against it. It was kind of doomed from the start. But like I said, Bentley did not go around and line up support.
He didn't get the
He
support
didn't.
before he ever called a special session. That was
Right.
one of the problems. And I had a legislator say to me the last day, he said, every day of this session has felt like the last day because there was so much dissent, there was so many factions, people so angry and arguing.
And so much
It
to
was
get
very
done.
contentious on
Yeah.
the seventh floor. But just to reiterate what Jack said, that's what I was going to say. All the special interests. The special interests are the ones that killed the lottery.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we would be remiss without mentioning that the new speaker, Speaker Mac McCutcheon, did a stellar job of shepherding these bills through the House. And we hadn't been able to say that in a long time, Jack, that somebody actually shepherded it through and didn't cram it through with a ramrod.
We've never had a shepherd over there in a while, I'll tell you.
He got
Yeah.
that bill through with 87 members on his side. It was done quickly. And it wasn't, like you said, ramrodded. The ones that disagreed, they voted what they wanted.
You know, the weirdest thing, Claire, was we were standing on the seventh floor. They asked for him to come up on the seventh floor, and he came up and he said hello
Yeah,
and all that.
chit-chatted with all of them.
But there was no entourage. He was by himself.
It was just him, not him and 3 or 4 other guys.
Well, he's not Hitler. He's not the king.
That's what we
He's
like.
not the king that's been the king of the fifth floor.
But,
It's
I mean,
quite
I
refreshing.
was like,
It
there's
is.
after we left, I was like, he doesn't have an entourage. I mean, where's the entourage?
He's a humble, down-to-earth person.
It was
He
just,
is.
it's refreshing, I got to say this. But to Jack's point on Alpha, you know, Alpha comes in, they don't want to let the people vote on a lottery, but for the last, since 1995, they've been getting about $30 million a year in tax credits, Susan.
They have, and it continues. This came up a couple of years ago. If they want to flex their muscle now, Senator Marsh took a little issue with this week when he called for a committee to investigate how we budget. And it's going to be a joint committee between the House and the Senate about how this actually plays
And one of the
out.
things he said, we only got about 30 seconds, is he wants to look at tax credits.
And okay, and my question is this just window dressing and a PR thing to appease the people, or are they going to really get down in the weeds and figure this out?
He sounded pretty serious to me.
You know, I don't know. I mean, it sounded serious, but like, you know, they
It's
set up these
politics.
committees to study, Jack.
And usually
then
that's a dead-
all they do is study.
Right. And you know, you wrote a story about this with Alpha and their tax breaks, what, 3 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I mean, we beat this
And
horse to death.
We talked about it on the show a couple of times.
I mean, we got Medicaid
Got a
starving
little
over here, but
pushback
yet
from the old farmers, but
Yeah.
you know.
They did. They tried to bring in a combine and
They circle our studio with tractors and
it was nasty.
threw eggs.
bush hogs. And good God.
Well, you don't want to get in fights with farmers because they can dig holes that they won't find you in. We're going to leave it right there. You're watching the V, the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the V, the voice of Alabama politics. Beth, welcome.
Hello, glad to be here.
You're wearing your spectacles today.
I am, I know. I turned 27, and so I'm just falling apart at the seams
Wow.
now. The hearing aids will be in next week.
Good God, try 60.
You're just beginning down that path of falling apart, everything going south.
You have a lot to look forward to. Getting old is not for the weak, that's for sure. Speaking of the weak, Governor Bentley could not have been seen as more weak. He came out and took a victory lap and said, this is a great victory. For who? I mean, this, the people didn't get to vote on a lottery. We had to raid the BP money to get it. Beth, I mean, I didn't see any leadership coming from Bentley.
No leadership. And I mean, even seen through the fact that the lottery was the call for the session. That was the whole point. So how do you say, we're going to have a special session to vote on a lottery and send it to the people for the November ballot, and we don't get a lottery vote really up or down one way or the other? It kind of just fizzled and died. So how do you call it a success when your one goal of the special session wasn't achieved?
Well, he didn't have to keep talking about that we're killing children anymore. So
Don't even start me on that again.
I mean, Jack, Bentley doesn't do the normal things that governors have done, infinitum, at bringing people in and trying to work with them and that stuff.
Let him claim victory. I mean, he lost his wife, he lost his beach house, he lost his Tuscaloosa house, and apparently he's lost his mind. So, give the guy a victory,
What was that? Let me think.
So many losses, so little time. Well, I wrote the other day that if time didn't get Bentley, law enforcement probably would. But I really do think this is odd. He doesn't bring people over to the State House. I mean, the Capitol, he doesn't invite them. I know I've said this before, but I've heard from several senators and House members go, he wrote me a thing and said I was his friend. He's never even had me over for a cup of coffee. I mean, how does that work, Susan?
I don't think anybody wants to go over there, though, do they? And
As long as
sit there
nobody's
with
got a
him
camera in the room, I think they're okay
sit there with him and Leona Helmsley. Good Lord.
Jack, what'd you put in your coffee this morning?
Well, not enough.
It is interesting. You bring that up. I did have one senator say, yeah, I had to go over there. I was hoping they'd bring me through the Wallace elevator because I didn't want to see anybody see me talking to him. That's really bad, isn't it, Beth? I mean,
It is, and I've been into the Capitol to meet with the governor with one of our representatives, and it was almost like you're being chastised for not doing exactly what he wanted all the time. And I think one of his biggest flaws is that he doesn't seem to understand that we have 105 House members and 36 senators, and they're all doing what is best for their districts. And this isn't a government by fiat. He can't just compel people to do what he wants. You got to schmooze them a little bit, and you can't do that by slapping them on the wrist.
Traditionally, any of our great governors have done that. They have understood that this is something the governor and the legislature have to work together. They have to be friends. If it means bring them over for bagels and coffee, and everybody's sitting and just kind of trying to work
they just go
things
to
out.
New York, she's schmoozing, and she's bagel and coffee. Does Bentley eat bagels? I don't think so.
Probably not.
Probably not.
No.
Probably not.
I want to do... change over to a...
Hoe cakes, maybe.
Yeah, okay. Okay. How do you spell that?
I don't know.
H-O-E?
Don't, yeah.
Like hoe, right? Anyway, we went down and got to see Mike Hubbard this week.
Yep,
and
last week.
he was in a hearing, and at that hearing, he didn't get what he wanted, and so he just said it out loud. This is a kangaroo court. I mean, Susan, calling Judge Walker's court a kangaroo court is not the smartest thing that Mike Hubbard has ever done.
That's not just Judge Jacob Walker the third's court. It's also Judge Jacob Walker the second's court. So he not only insulted Judge Walker that's presently presiding, he also insulted his father.
Yeah, not a good idea. Beth, one of the things that Bill Baxley was trying to argue, he said that the estate had blindsided them, that they had bamboozled them, and I thought he was going to break into the full Malcolm X, but he didn't. But he's saying that this expert witness, that was Jim Sumner, who was certified an expert witness, shouldn't have been allowed to testify.
Right, and I mean, these are all things that you have to raise in the beginning, and the judge settled them in the beginning. And in the issue of him bringing up the kangaroo court, I'm sorry, but don't even try to compare your trial to the all-white juries and a black defendant that we had in the 60s and before. Like, this is not even the same thing. That's a kangaroo court. It just seems to me like he learned a new word, and if he really thought it was a kangaroo court, and he really thought that he wasn't getting a fair trial, he should have motioned for a change of venue before this happened. Only the defendant can do that. The state can't be the ones to bring it up. He never raised the issue. He let the trial go forward, and now that he didn't get his way, he's saying, oh, wait, hold on, that wasn't a fair trial. Let's try again.
Well, Jack, we always felt that he loved being in Lee County because he was so popular down there at one point. I mean,
Well, you had the sheriff with him nose up his rear end the whole time, and a lot of local people saying, oh, you know, it's not guilty, he'll never get convicted.
Well, and remember, Jack, he paraded the country club through the courtroom all through the trial.
Oh, I
There
know.
weren't
It
very
was a
many of
who's
them
who.
there last week.
It was a who's who of folks.
there was not, but it was just stunning. The other thing that Baxley tried to argue was that there was improper conduct on the part of a juror. He, however, was not prepared to have the hearing on that, right, Susan?
Judge Walker was not really pleased with that. He expected that this hearing, and he had set aside this day, he had moved other trials so that they could have a hearing on this juror misconduct issue. Baxley didn't even bother to bring the person that filed the affidavit to the court. However, Judge Walker said, fine, we're going to go ahead and hear from the people in the court. They heard from 2 bailiffs who were with the jury 100% of the time that said they saw no misconduct whatsoever. The court administrator, who's the one that was notified about this talking under the breath, who went and had a bailiff talk to the person. The person actually denied that they'd ever done that. So we really don't know. But the point is that Judge Walker went ahead and had his hearing, minus Baxley's defendant, because he wasn't there.
Well, he
She
said
wasn't there.
he wasn't prepared. I mean, that's his standard
It's been his
stick.
thing since day one.
Yeah.
But I mean, the things that they're alleging as misconduct simply are not juror misconduct. It doesn't involve extrajudicial evidence. It doesn't involve anybody saying, I read online that this happened. It involved people making comments about what was being presented under their breath that simply doesn't rise to the level of jury misconduct, at least nothing I've ever learned.
Well, and the judge seemed to say, to Jack's point, they wanted an investigation by a third party into jury misconduct.
He was previously endorsed Mike Hubbard.
Yeah, I mean,
for
and that
office.
was...
Yeah, Jay Jones, the sheriff, who did a TV spot for Mike saying he's one of the most honest people I've ever met.
Oh, I've got the
Wow.
mail piece at my house. They came to my house.
We're hoping Jay Jones makes some new friends after that. But I tell you, it was a snoozer. If it hadn't have been for bamboozle,
Look,
blindsided.
we all lived through this. That guy is as guilty as the day is long.
Yes,
yeah.
he
and,
is.
and he treated people like crap. He had no respect for anybody. He's getting what he deserves. I'm sorry.
Well, that's going to have to be the last word in this segment. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics. Jack, how do you really feel?
I'm Dario Melton. When I think about Selma, I think about home. This is the neighborhood that I grew up in. Like so many other kids, this is where my hopes and dreams came alive. I believe that we can do big, important things right here in Selma. I believe we can work together to grow Selma from our roots out, building a city we can all be proud to call home, with safe streets, quality schools, and 21st century jobs. I'm Dario Melton, and I'm running for mayor. Let's put Selma first.
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. Jack, one of the most ridiculous things that I've had to report on in some time was that one of Mike Hubbard's bootlicking sycophants, how do you pronounce that again?
Sycophant.
has put together a commission to study ethics.
And who is that?
Mike Ball.
Well, it would take balls to do that. So, of course, you know. Yeah, I mean, really, that is the proverbial, I don't want to steal your line.
It's the fox guard in the hen house.
Absolutely. I mean, Mike Ball, who's lived off the fat of the land and been wined and dined more than Queen Elizabeth, is wants to head up and wants to appoint an ethics
And let's
panel.
not forget, a couple of years ago, he tried to get the ethics laws changed so that other legislators wouldn't come under the same fire that Mike Hubbard came under.
Well, I mean,
and try
this
to
is
get Mike Hubbard off.
This is the same
It came with
guy,
legislation.
the same guy who went down to Lee County and accused Matt Hart of prosecutorial misconduct
Yes.
because Matt had called him out on something he said. I mean, Beth, this is the guy that Mike Hubbard placed as chair of the ethics committee in the House. What's he doing there?
Yeah, anybody who Mike Hubbard wants in charge of ethics has no business being in charge of ethics.
A truer statement never said.
And I mean, like I said, it's the fox guard in the house. I don't think that there's any way that anyone subject to the ethics laws can make effective ethics laws. It's just the way it is. Like, no, they're not going to put restrictions on themselves that make it where they can't get cool dinners and trips and all the fun perks they get. This is going to have to be somebody who has no stake in this outcome except good government. So I don't know if we need to put together a citizen coalition or how this needs to go down.
I'll say that if Mike Ball, if you do get this through, I want to be on that commission.
Oh yeah, I'll join you with that.
Yeah.
Let's put the V team in charge of ethics.
I mean, well, there's a reason the Ethics Commission has no lawmakers on it. Of course, it has a couple of former lawmakers on it, which I think is stupid.
Well, that thing's still wretched. I mean, I think that somebody's put the fear of God into all Britain over
hope
there
so.
at ethics, and he's straightening up a little bit.
Didn't Mike Ball get on the radio and say we need to change the ethics law so this Mike Hubbard thing doesn't happen again?
Right? Yeah, he did.
He went to every outlet except for we wouldn't give him a voice.
That tells you exactly what's wrong with this. They don't think what Mike Hubbard did was wrong. There's still people in the legislature who will admit all of the facts of what happened, and they will say, yeah, but that's why is that a problem? They don't get why this is wrong, and anybody who doesn't see why this is wrong needs to stay out of it.
Well, and the voters need to vote him out. We need to find somebody to point that out.
And who is going over these ethics filings? Mayoral said he was going to. John, where are you? Crickets.
Well,
your lawyer called me to quiz me about it, but he promised that he was going to compare contributor to recipient,
Right.
and to see if there was a matchup.
One of the things I do want to suggest here is that you really have, with ethics, we need to start at the Attorney General's office with those who actually are in charge of enforcing them, because the Ethics Commission in Alabama, you might as well just drown that baby
We
because
just
it
need to
doesn't
get rid
work.
of it. That's probably the only thing Claire and I can agree on in this whole world is that we need to get rid of the Ethics Commission altogether.
and
Just let
if
AG's
you
office
sit
handle
down
it.
and you get Deputy Chief Alice Martin, you get Matt Hart, you get Mike Duffy, you get those people to give you a foundation and say, this is the foundation. Here's what the law should be.
And take your time about doing it this time. One of the reasons that Mike Hubbard got in trouble is they did this too fast. They didn't think everything through, which they're notorious for doing to start with.
Do we really want them thinking it through so that they have loopholes in there? I mean, really?
Well, that's true.
you know,
there's
that's
a
true.
solution to this, and that is make it where our legislators get paid for a full-time salary to do their jobs. They can't take any other income. Cut it out.
I used to think that was a crazy idea, but I'm starting to believe
I
it.
think it's a
beginning
great
to come
idea.
over
We
to
ought to
that
treat
idea.
them like lawmakers, give them a staff and a decent office and a salary, and cut all this other frivolity out. They are still buying football tickets with campaign contributions. Now, do you think people that give them money want them to spend it on things like that? I don't think so.
No, I don't
agree.
think so either. And there's still a lot of hanky-panky going on behind the scenes. There's a lot of loopholes that they're trying to exploit. And there are lawyers out there that want to make a living exploiting them. But again, I think we need to start with the Attorney General's office. Then you can bring in, like Beth said, a citizens panel that can look at them. But again, I think anything that has got to go back to that core group that has the responsibility to bring folks to justice for breaking it. I think we can all agree
You mean
with that.
lawyers actually being involved in legislation that
Yeah,
involves
well,
law?
I don't mean defense lawyers.
I don't mean defense lawyers.
I mean
I'm just saying
prosecutors.
that's just a logical thing.
I just think that somebody needs to review these ethics forms when they're filed with the Ethics Commission. They're just stamped or, and go in a file.
It's so vague,
Yeah.
Jack. They're so vague. They really don't reveal anything.
Well, let's take
And
Senator Phil Williams, for example. He's got
Right.
37 clients that pay him from X to X.
But he doesn't have to list who those clients are. He only has to check boxes that he has them in this sort of field or that sort of field, or how much they're paying, and none of that's revealed.
Well,
in
all these
ethics forms.
lawyers have an exception that they don't have to put theirs on there.
Well,
And
I
that's-
understand there being that confidentiality issue with who's paying attorneys, and because you need your representation in the courtroom. But too many times lawyers are acting as lobbyists, not
Absolutely.
as courtroom advocates.
We got quite a few of them. We've got people that are lobbyists, like the ones over at Bradley A. who don't have to disclose it simply because they're working for a law firm. That's a crazy loophole.
It is.
I do want to get to one sad and sober thing with last minute we've got here. This is the 15th anniversary of the terror attacks on 9/11. Susan and I were living in Manhattan and heard the first plane go over. And as I said, we saw terror come out of a clear September sky. And it affected everyone in different ways, but it affected our nation. I'm not sure it's affected our nation we responded to it not like we did Pearl Harbor or some of these other big events. We've become more frightened, I think, and less a nation that has courage and is not going to be intimidated. But it is good to remember those that we lost and those people who came and did the rescue and help.
And a lot of those first responders and second responders are still suffering from the effects of
are.
what they experienced that day. And it's important to remember they're still working and fighting that battle.
Remember, it wasn't just that day. It was 6 months worth of that day that they were in there fighting every day to try to do the
It's one of those events, and if you're old enough, like the assassination of Kennedy, you remember exactly where you were when you heard about it.
Bill and I heard the first plane go over.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Be etched indelibly in a lot of folks' minds and souls.
And we've got soldiers now still serving in Afghanistan that would not even remember that day, but are giving their lives to protect us all. We're gonna have to leave it right there. You've been watching the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us because we watch them.
Thank you, God, for letting me grow up in America. I haven't been anywhere else, but from what I heard, it's the best place on earth. In good times, America is a beautiful land of opportunity, full of people who've come from all around the world. And in bad times,
today, our fellow citizens, our way of life, our very freedom came under attack in a series of deliberate and deadly terrorist acts.
that's when America really shines. Whenever something bad happens, anywhere in the world, you'll find Americans showing up to clean up the mess. Whether it's a tsunami, an earthquake, or terrorist attack, Americans give more money and help than any other country. We come together and show the world that we are here to help and comfort and feed and rebuild. I wasn't around when the attack happened on September 11th, but my parents told me the story, and I will tell my children about it. We will never forget the lessons learned and how you helped us pick up the pieces. As long as we can keep it one nation under God, no bad guys will ever conquer America. The bad guys might win for a short time, but not for long. We will never forget the victims who died that day, and God bless their families. Thank you, God, for letting me grow up in America.